Well, Grid Life at Road America was a fun event. As always, it was a full festival this year, so there's a bunch of music and drifting and all kinds of other stuff going on, which was pretty cool. But cars still got issues. So when it's cold at this point, the car runs pretty good. And then after it gets heat soaked, then I got my Phantom misfire back. So I'm almost looking at this point at whether or not there's a crack in the intake perhaps, or once it gets up to temp, something's moving around and developing a leak because of expansion. Or maybe it's something ignition. I've had it suggested that maybe there's a cracked spark plug. I don't know, maybe there's a bad spot in one of my plug wires. And I'm just kind of running out of ideas to check otherwise. So I'm going to be going back through this so far with a mirror and like looking underneath the intake. I'm not seeing anything. And I mean, the way it's pulling vacuum that I can see on the fuel injection screen, it seems like it's not really a vacuum leak that's developing. So I'm leaning more towards the ignition system. I do have another set of plug wires I'm going to throw on here and check, and I'm going to pull the plugs back out and look those over really well. When I was going through things the other day before the event to check and make sure, I had great compression on all of the cylinders. The valve lash was loose, so I did readjust that. It made a big change. I had to pull 8% fuel out of idle, so I don't know, we made progress, but like it has been over the last 2 months, it's better, but the problem is not fixed. Still looking at what it could be. Somebody else had brought up that perhaps it's heat related with the coil. I don't know why all of a sudden after 5 years of racing this setup that all of a sudden we'd have a heat issue, unless of course maybe there's something internal on the coil that's going bad. I might be able to swap that out or just make a jumper harness to plug that into a different coil and give that a try. I really want to just troubleshoot with what I have. I don't want to start just throwing parts at this thing. Alright, checking these plugs over. I think I'm going to throw a new set in because there's a little bit of suspect going on here. The easiest one to see. So a little bit of oil or tracking or something coming out of this one. It's the only one that looks like that. And if I look way down inside the porcelain, there's kind of a line that travels around the outside. This one, just kind of a burn line around the porcelain up there. Anyway, that's two plugs that look a little suspect. I mean, I can't outright say that that's a problem, but it's worthwhile to put a new set of plugs in just to either find out or eliminate a possible issue there. I'm mostly just looking at these things, and the fact that I see that something's different than the rest of the plugs is what's catching my attention. Also, when I was pulling the plug wires off, one of them wasn't on very tight. It might need new crimps on the ends. I do have a second set of plug wires here I'll probably swap on just to double check with that as well. Perhaps I'll put the plugs in first and then run it and see if the issue goes away, and then put plug wires on after that. I could certainly run a nicer set of plug wires as far as length and making them look nice under the engine bay, but I'm mostly worried about whether or not it's actually going to work right. So and even then, I think the wires are still good. It's just if the crimp's a little wore out, so it's not sitting on the spark plug nice and tight, it could be doing some arcing inside and wasting some spark energy inside of the boot. So I'm going to look and see if maybe I can just get new ends to recrimp on there and revitalize those spark plug wires I have been using. Another thing worth checking just because was the gasket seal, but I've got nice solid crush
all the way around on this gasket. I don't think that's the issue, or even remotely close to being an issue. I do have a 2-inch spacer though laying around, so I think I'm going to add that on because I've got plenty of hood clearance, so might help with some power, assuming I get it to run right. Alright, got the spacer on there. This actually puts a little less tension in all the wires too, which is nice. They're not pinched pretty tight. Otherwise they were pulling quite a bit. Here you wouldn't even wiggle them that much as easily. So whether or not that's any part of the problem, I doubt it. But another thing I want to address as long as I'm here is this linkage for the secondaries. It's still not quite how I want it to be. I mean, based on where I got the screw set at, as you can see, I will start opening, and there I feel the tension for the backs to start open. So, opening, there, it starts moving the back. You know, so there's this much movement in the front barrel before it moves the back, and the ECU will be adding fuel that whole time. So I'm going to try to address that so that they both open together and smoothly. I think I should be able to do that by putting a little more bend into this linkage bar. So we'll give that a shot. I just held it in the vise on the short side and tapped on it with a hammer on the long side. It's actually bent fairly easy. Like, I had to go back and forth to the bench a couple of times before I got it far enough, which, just because of the angle, or because we're changing center to center distance is really what it is, but we're doing it with an angle, I actually had to go quite a bit. Like, I think if it hadn't been bent right now, it'd be almost that far away as far as the difference in angle of this part. But now that it is bent, like, as soon as it starts wiggling, it's opening both. So that should take care of any possible drivability issues stemming from the fact that they were putting the same amount of fuel in, even though the first like 6 or 8% of throttle opening, I was only getting more air through the front and not through the back. Again, I don't think this is my actual issue, but it should help some more with getting this thing dialed in for running better again. So I just got a fresh set of plugs in there, and I'm gonna try again with these spark plug wires before changing them out, because I think maybe I didn't have them pushed on all the way on at least one of them or two of them. So because I was able to stick a new spark plug in and hear an audible click on every one, so now I'm listening for that on each one. I don't know if the camera's going to pick it up, but we can try here. That one was pretty quiet. Let's try it again. Hear that click? So I'm listening for that on all 8. While messing around with the air cleaner here, I realized I needed to make some clearance because it had been rubbing all the way around, which means my air cleaner wasn't actually sitting flat and it was spinning. Oh, a little bit of ball peen hammer work and able to make it clear now. So now it sits. Before I used the ball peen, it was rocking back and forth. So now it sits down flat. So it should actually seal properly this time. Getting up to operating temp here. Usually right about now is where it starts popping
and making problems, so we'll see if that happens or not. Well, we're getting any pops just with it sitting here. I probably still need to go take it for a test drive, but I don't know. It might have just been them spark plugs. It sounds different. It revs quicker. So, man, I've been chasing my tail for 2 months. If it's just spark plugs, I feel like an idiot. But better get a little more testing done to make sure. Did a little test drive, probably 20 to 30 miles or so. I feel like a broken record at this point. It's better, like a lot better with the new spark plugs, and I don't know how much the spacer would have mattered for that. I can see my tune is still way off again, so clearly there must have been something wrong with some of them spark plugs anyway. It popped a couple of times in the first 5 miles, and I stopped about halfway, shut it off, started it back up. It popped a couple times right after that. Otherwise, no pops the whole trip. So, I mean, that's a big improvement. Makes me think that it's still something with the ignition system. So, I feel like perhaps a new set of spark plug pliers. So, I feel like perhaps a new... So I feel like perhaps a new set of spark plug... Why can't I say spark plug wires? So perhaps a new set of spark plug wires is going to be the way to go. I haven't found anything that says that this set is bad. However, I mean, they have been on the car for 6 years now, so maybe it's time for a new set. So I picked up a set of universal wires, got extra length on them. I'm actually pretty surprised how much extra length this set's got, but that's nice because then I got all the terminals and stuff. I can set them the way I want. We're gonna try to do a cleaner job than what I ended up doing on these ones. I mean, they're not bad. They're especially pretty good down in here. I'm gonna see if I can't get a little bit cleaner up in the back as far as making up a new wire set. If you're new to this or having trouble keeping track, especially when you start taking wires off and changing them out, do what I did here and label which cylinders are which right on the distributor cap. That way, if you forget, you can just visually double check. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to sort them by length. I obviously need longest ones to be cylinders 1 and 2. There might be a slight variation in that depending on which side of the cap they end up on, but I'm just going to go ahead and pick out the 2 longest ones, and I'm just going to start laying them out on the car and then make sure that I can have more than enough length to every possible spot on the distributor. That way I know I'm not going to start cutting and making wires and then wind up being short with one of them or more at the end. In order to get a pretty clean layout, I'm going to work from the plugs back to the distributor just to try to make everything look as nice as possible. These wires came with some clips, so I'm just going to use those because it'll be quick and easy. You can also do it with zip ties or any other set of clips that you might have. Big thing is just making sure that it works, but these clips are made for the smaller wires. I bought the big wires, so that kind of sucks. Oh yeah. Alright, well, we'll see if the other ones I have fit.
So what I'm going for here is a nice look, keeping them evenly spaced. I ended up going right to the 4 because I'm trying to keep it off of rubbing on the frame and on the steering down there. So once these are pulled in a little bit, we'll have some, maybe just a little bit of tension when they're hooked to the distributor. That'll help keep them off of any rubbing situations. So getting to the distributor is the part where it gets difficult. First we're going to want to make sure we got these things routed, where they're not going to be in the way of other things. Like here, it'll be easiest just to go underneath the throttle cable and the brake booster line. However, we're at the point where I know that we're going to have 3 wires going around the backside and one of them going to number 1 here. And that's going to kind of change. They might have to crisscross or something like that. So I want to get that figured out, and then maybe I'll move those around where it keeps it nice here or tuck it back here. It all depends. I want to just try to see what looks the best and make sure that we got plenty of length for a little bit of movement. And if something changes with the setup of any other hoses, lines, anything up here, that we've got enough room to work with that. So what do you get with cheap parts store stuff? We'll drill it. Okay, I'm ready to cut these things to length. Also, it's kind of funny the way I sorted them out, and shortest was number 7. I'm actually going to be using the full length for that one, and look how much I'm planning to cut off of number 1. Lots extra. Like number 1 probably could have used the shortest out of the set. So it's nice that it has a bunch of extra length, but I'm going to trim that down. So I've marked where I want to cut them. And I'm just going to trim these. So if you ever done a set of MSD wires, this is exactly the same. In fact, this looks like almost an exact copy. Oh, except I got the wrong side up. Right? Yeah. I drilled. Oh, yeah. Sure enough, I drilled the other side. All right. Well. Anyway, I drilled one side out here to make it easier on myself. So we'll just mount this the other way. And this is just to be a, you push it flush and then cut it off. I see the factory one is slightly longer, so I'm gonna fudge a little bit more. It's not gonna hurt anything. And just put a razor blade down and twist the wire. Just like that. Now we got our core exposed, so we can fold it over and crimp it. Now for crimping this, we need to be able to have that piece fit inside of there. So we're going to put this over the wire and then squeeze it a little bit. You're going to want to fold that lead back. I'm going to kind of eyeball what's top and bottom here, just to minimize twist in the wire. Alright, so that's folded over. Just give it a little squeeze with the needle nose. And then I can slip that in there. At this point, make sure that our core is making good contact down there. And then we squeeze it with the bench vise to crimp it. There's your crimped wire. Now to finish your plug assembly, or end, Just have a little bit of dielectric grease on here. We can take our boot, push it on there until we can get it centered up. Now I've got the driver's side laid out and hooked up. I really like where everything's sitting in that. I ended up using 2 of the 4-wire clips on this side, and almost every one of these spark plug wire clip things that I've ever seen is a 2, 3, 4 for both sides. Where I'm ending up is it'd be a lot nicer to have 2, 4, 4 for how they set up, or maybe because I should say 4, 4, 2 going the other way, but I'm going to end up zip tying some of these just to clean it up. So the first step is going to be wrapping a longer zip tie around the outside edge and getting it started. And actually I can run this down fairly snug. I want to position it where the sharp bits are going to be to the bottom. I'm going to get it kind of close to where I want the spacing at. And then we'll use the other zip ties to wrap around in between each wire. And we're going to try to make sure we remember to do them all in the same direction, just for visuals. And then we're going to flip these to the bottom also. And we can start snugging them up. We're going to go just a little bit at a time. Get them kind of close. And then as we get tight, so I'm doing the ones in between and the sides, the ones in between and the sides. And then we have our zip tie wire loom. I could have done a little better job making sure that this one was on the bottom. Maybe I needed to wrap it the other way, but as you can see, as long as you put the stuff to the bottom, it'll be kind of hidden and out of sight. And it makes it look pretty nice, and you keep your wires in a nice, even, pretty looking row. How do you think I did? Just ran it a minute just to make sure that I got the wires all hooked up in the right place again, just to verify, but I think I'm about ready for another test drive to see if this helped any with the pop and misfire. But yeah, I like it. It's way cleaner than the old ones looked.
Finally! It runs like it's supposed to. I can't believe I'm dumb enough that I didn't just put spark plugs and wires too in it 2 months ago when this problem started, but I mean, like the last couple of videos, like I've been going through and I've clearly found a whole bunch of other problems going on. So, I mean, finally to have this figured out, like I just went to the Minnesota Oldsmobile show today. I was down in Hugo, probably 40 miles round trip. This thing drove wonderfully the whole time. So happy to finally have it back to the way it's supposed to be. So yeah, went down there, full aero and everything, talked to a few people, went over pretty well. I don't know, got stared at a lot on the way in and out, so. But yeah, no, it's great. I'm so happy it's finally driving nice, and I want to drive it some more, so I'm going to pull the aero off so I don't have to worry about ripping the splitter off and drive it around some more today.